too. So we start with a question. First, we need to know what a senior golfer is, because Rachel Ling asked me last night, what is a senior golfer?
I don't qualify more.
Theoretically, when a player hits 50 years of age, they can play on the Champions Tour or the Stay Sure Tour on the European Tour. So what you're going to notice over the next couple of years, it's going to become very, very competitive. Padraig Harrington, who I've worked with for a long, long time, is 47, 48, so it's not too long before he'll be in the senior ranks. And they can make a damn good living. Do you know how much force there is in a golf swing? I know Paul Chek has a figure, those of you that have gone from a Paul Chek background, but if we go newtons, or say gravitational force, we go in G-forces, how many forces, or how many G's there are?
Someone told me before it was the equivalent of a 3 RM, but like, yeah, that's a check.
3 RM in the deadlift.
Yeah.
I suppose it's relative to your own strength, is it not? Like,
Yeah. So Liam Hennessy, who runs Sedenta College, probably one of the smartest men I've been lucky enough to spend time with. The guy is like, you had Master Yoda up. I find he's like Master Yoda. You pick up the phone, ask him a question, he'll know what to say. So Padraig and Liam have been, I would say, playing around or messing around for 20 years on improving Padraig's performance and longevity. So he got an accelerometer that they use for the rugby players and put it on Padraig because he likes data. He loves numbers. So they measured with a driver, which is the biggest club in the bag, it was up to 6 Gs of force, which is equivalent to rugby, but it's going to be dispersed all over the body as opposed to a shoulder or head tackling to the ribs. And when we look at the senior golfer in Ireland, a lot of them are not in good shape. They're heavy, they're beer-bellied. We talk about weight loss, which I'll discuss in a minute, why we want to be careful with that weight loss when it comes to golf. There's a number of factors that we have to bring to place to build that better senior golfer. Or if it's an older hurler. The rotational sports, squash, tennis, they'll all transfer over. TPI, who's the Titleist Performance Institute, they run seminars for golf pros, fitness, medical. They're the only true golf-specific screen anymore. Nike tried the 360 program. It didn't last. Egos, and it blew up. But Titleist has trained probably 20,000, 25,000, 30,000 at this rate. They've now gone into tennis, so they've racket fit. They've gone into soccer. I'm pretty sure if you ran the TPI screen with hurlers, it would give you a good data. And we'll run over some of the tests that are equivalent to some of the areas I want to focus on, because we're not going to look at all the conditions today, but I certainly want to give you a good grasp of back pain in the golfer, because that's the reason why a lot of them are going to come in, or at least if you can prevent it, it'll make a massive difference. So the first thing we need to do with the senior golfer is we need a baseline. So my suggestion is run a TPI screen. If you don't want to do TPI courses, then you have to have something that's going to check where the golfer is in time. The FMS doesn't translate well into golf. There's very little rotary component of it, so there's no rotational checks in it. The FMS doesn't really transfer. Screen.
Yeah, but the next one after that.
The SFMA. Yeah, they teach us that in the TPI Medical 2 and 3. There is some rotational, but from a golf purist point of view, the TPI screen, which I'll show quite a number of components of, that's the only pure test, or for being sport specific. But again, there's a lot of argument if that athlete comes into you, or that patient client comes in and they're injured, then you can't run as soon as pain's put into the thing, the motor control is going to change. You will be shocked if we went down to Portmonic Golf Club today. The weather's not great, but it's been great for 2 months nearly. If we checked their golf bags, I would say it would be full of Nurofen, ibuprofen, Celebrex. Also, they're munching on the tablets. The same happens in the Pro Tour, beside the guys that have the smarts to put private medical staff in place. A lot, even normal players. Danny Willett said he was chewing painkillers for 6 years. This guy's 28, 29, maybe 30. It's not good on the liver. You've been talking about diets and fitness and the toxicity of the liver with all these painkillers. So a lot of them are going to have painkillers, even if you don't ask them. If we could search all the bags. Sometimes it's beer and a painkiller. So for me, any golfer, doesn't matter if it's junior, all the way up to 50, the senior golfer, some of the old boys I get in, they're the best crack because they absolutely love their golf. They're retired. They get to play a lot more than... The big problem we have in golf is the under 35 group is getting smaller. People are saying they've no time. It's about 5 hours a round. Oh, I've got to go see the kids. But on the flip side, I'm seeing people doing triathlons. So no time, but I have time. But you have time to do what you want. For me, thoracic spine rotation, their hip mobility, seeing what their ankles are doing, shoulder mobility. And then as we're dealing with senior golfers today, they're more likely going to have plus 1, 2, 3 joints replaced. But they will be able to play at a high level, even with the joint. Somebody like Tom Watson, how many of you play golf? How many of you see golfers? How many of you know who Tom Watson is? So he's both hips replaced, as far as I know. So he's well able to swing around the area. I had a patient in the last day, he doesn't play much golf. He had his hips replaced 16, 17 years ago. And there's a lot of debate about how long these replacements are going to last. So he had follow-up X-rays this year, and there's very little wear. So it's a good sign, because we don't know. But if they're playing golf, the demands in that 6 Gs of force going through shoulders, hands, wrists, and hips, it might be a problem. But generally, it's going to be hips, maybe some spinal surgery, fusions. But generally, the hip is so you're going to see lots of these. They have stopped resurfacing hips in Ireland. So they won't do it anymore. Tygo Sullivan was the one that wanted to do it. Except I think there's chromium in the replacement or in the resurfaced joint, and it was going into the bloodstream. You guys know a lot more nutrition than me. It's not good for the body. So they've stopped resurfacing. What they will do, I have a patient that's 37 years of age. He's going to have his hip replaced this year. They won't. So instead of they send a spike down into the femur, and then the concrete around it to get it to stick to the femur. What they do with the young hip replacements, and I think it's going to happen more and more. For a gentleman to have a hip replaced at 38 and then have to have it done at 58, is they won't put the concrete down around the replacement. To just whip out the prosthetic joint again and put it back in.
I talked to Guy Voyer, and Guy was saying basically in France, he said instead of the hip getting the pins at the top, he said he'd take a chip out of your femur and break your leg, which would drop your femur down.
Yeah.
And stop compression in the joint. He says, well, put a bar in there and come back a year later. Yeah, he said, because I showed him mine.
Yeah.
And he would say, he said, no, in France we wouldn't have done that. We would chip your bone here, put a plate in there with some screws, that would drop down your hip, would stop the bone-on-bone wear, and look to remodel it. So they wouldn't have to do it. It's a different...
How long does it feel like till you actually have to do it?
It'd stop the compression all the time.
Yeah.
We'd allow it to repair, which would prevent it altogether.
The problem we have with the Celtic hips, Sir McGill talks about it, it's well researched. We've deep hip sockets for Irish people, Celtic population. They're going to wear. The labrums are going to wear. We will come to the screening of the hips because it's extremely important that we can get as much rotation through them to protect the...
So when you say they're going to wear, do you mean with a high level activity or just day to day eventually it's going to wear?
Or even day to day. Well, it depends on what they're doing, but from a golf point of view, I want to protect them as much as possible. And you'd be surprised, you come in even screening golfers 36, 37, and you put their hip into what you call a Footwear position, and they're all the way up there. You're like, oh my God, and nobody's ever checked it. And then you're like, well, why do you have back pain? Because your hip's doing nothing. Generally across all the populations, back pain is the number one reason why they're gonna get hurt. Depending on the profile, I would say it's probably more lead elbow in the pros and more in the amateur population for the neck. And then shoulder tendonitis, particularly the lead shoulder, because it's stretched all the way over. We'll go through the golf swing in very simplistic terms, because if we start going down that road, it could get very, very messy very quickly, because there's so many different opinions on the golf swing. There's old school ones, new ones, and all the data, the three-dimensional things you can do with it. And you'll see a lot of the senior population, these tennis elbow braces, pop their ibuprofen, ready to go. Even from those of you that are just trainers, if you clean up their movement patterns, their pain will probably go away.
And just regards to professionals as well, then with back pain, would that be just as common
Yeah.
sense of?
Yeah. I was lucky because I got to see the player when I was working full-time professional. I got to see them every day, so a lot of the work was T-spine and hips, and thankfully didn't see too many lower back. And I mean that's going to happen. We can't stop the wearing process, but you're going to have clients who're 78. I think the oldest golfer has about 85. Loves going out, playing with his friends. He's loads of time. I think this year was one of the...
Does he really?
Well, I didn't tell him that. Like, this year was interesting from a point of view. It would have been an ideal year to do off-season training with a golfer, because they lost 28 days in January and February. It was the worst winter. I'm 36 years old. This is the worst winter I can ever remember. Now we got a nice summer as a result, and hopefully it'll come back again. The off-season thing, and I will touch on it as before we go on, things you might want to touch, not want to touch, on-season, off-season, is some of their screening things that you're going to find. Is it a mechanical advantage to them and help their game, and maybe picking one area to work on and then seeing what it does. So with permission from the Prague School, thankfully, I'm one of their practitioners and certified exercise trainer. They have some of the better images, so I asked Alana, who's one of the head neurologists. So this is a right-handed golfer. They call it the upswing, backswing. And you can see there they've marked a number of muscles. It's the one sport where you can't get away from a physical limitation. Oh, I sprained my ankle 25 years ago, and it starts to affect them. Because you've got two sports in one. You've got golf, which is a pulsatile, explosive sport, the hitting part of it, and then they've got to walk for 6 miles a day. So either of those two components is going to cause them back pain. And then the other problem we have is the old boys are not aerobically fit, as Luke was talking earlier. They're sitting on carts. And it's a big, big problem. So you can see all the way through subtalar joint, all the forces are going to go down onto that back leg. We can measure those forces now because they've force plates and they've become relatively cheaper. Those slings, oblique slings, are as important as it gets with golf. And that's why it puts the body under so much strain. It's very easy for a runner, sagittal plane, but you start putting rotational control through it. It is extremely hard for us to... Hurling, they're lucky. Hurlers are lucky because they get to hit both ways. And those of you who watch, there's loads of videos. They have occasionally asked the pros to hit left-handed, and it can be quite a funny experience. I think Ricky Fowler's one of the best players I've seen hit left-handed. It's also amazing if you asked him to go to the range and warm up, if you can get your amateur to do that, and you ask them to hit a few balls left-handed, it'll actually neurologically help them prep for the round. It'll feel funny to them, but they're so one-sided dominant. I'd love to see in a function MRI what golf does to the brain, or to that monkey in the brain, the homunculus.
If they kept another side of the club in their bag
Yeah.
for that purpose of warming up out in a competition, say amateur, would that count as one of their clubs?
Yeah. No, I just get them, put it in the range, and then whip it out. I could tell you some stories about the clubs being accidentally. The most dangerous thing, obviously, we were only allowed to 14, 15 clubs. The most dangerous, I've seen pros have had to call themselves because there was an extra club in the bag. Maybe it was raining and the cover's on it. Yeah, with an Irish caddy. Shane Lowry's old caddy, Dermot, I think it was his brother Miles, that there was an extra club in the. Yeah, the poor caddies get a lot of. Those of you that do work with golfers, they are not getting back here. There's not a hope. They may get there, and if you've Miguel Jimenez, who seems to be a bit of everyone laughs at his warm-ups on the range and things. He works extremely hard in the gym. He has this public persona through social media, and everyone will take those pictures of him messing about on the range, but he's busting his balls in the gym, he's working his ass off. The thing with Miguel is, if you see his, he's won, I think for player-wise, he's won more in his 40s. I think he's 50 now because he's Champions Tour. He's won more in his 40s than he did in his 20s and 30s. And he started going very flat. So he actually did well to tightening up. It was one of the rare occurrences of it, but he got better as he got older. Plus his bottle of Rioja every night. And his cigars. So upswing, all that load is going to go onto the trail leg. Not as much as the downswing when we come to. So there will be a load transfer. That's why the feet are so important. I could spend the whole hour and a half talking about feet. We're not going to, but don't underestimate what their footwear is going to do. Particularly, there was a stage where they brought in a lot of the barefoot shoes. FootJoy did it as well. And the old boys are wearing it. And if their feet are stiff and you put them into like a Nike Free equivalent of a golf shoe, it's not going to work very well. Adidas had a shoe that was a soccer shoe, and then they put golf spikes on it. It was called an Adi Zero. Within 2 weeks, all our players wearing the shoe started getting issues. So we had to change them very quickly. And you would assume that the golf shoe would be revolutionary, it would be perfect, it would be custom fit for the player. It's not. And you've got from regarding the golf swing, you've got a wear pattern that's unequal on the shoe. Particularly the right ankle, that the heel cup is going to wear a lot harder. And if that's ill-fitting, then they go walking, then it's going to change their gait as well.
It's like FootJoy bought that DNA shoe now.
Yeah.
It's more strategic and
Yeah.
that's all the way
Yeah. So the players, we worked with a podiatrist, and with the golf company I used to work with, he was from Brisbane. He got the players to change their shoes every 6 weeks. He'd have kind of 2 or 3 pairs they'd be cycling through, but he'd get them to bin it. The elitist that Stephen spoke about earlier, yes. The golf market is extremely important and is extremely untapped in this country. They are great clients because they want to beat their friends. They want to hit it further. If we can help them as trainers and medical to play pain-free, it makes it even better. They shouldn't have to take painkillers. But the shoe wear is very, very interesting. Ask them to bring their golf shoes in. The only problem is you look at something like a Tiger Woods 2018 shoe, €200. You're up in the price of a soccer shoe, a good soccer shoe.
around it for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Might find a decent bed.
Yeah.
In terms of, do you see the development of footwear, Shane, where the shoe size is not just in the length, now it's in the width?
Yeah. So,
Because obviously there's that rotation and there's
yeah.
that transfer in.
Michael Hoey got fitted, and I think it was exactly the same for Shane Lowry. Michael Hoey got fitted, and he was going 2 sizes up. He had big, fat duck feet. He won't mind me saying it. He knows. He's got big, fat feet. But he went 2 sizes up to get the space, and then Ash, who was the podiatrist from Australia, said, "What are you doing that for? You get whatever you want." So they are going to a wider shoe. Because it'll call like he was like if it's moving around, he's not going to get the. And you can the one joint that's definitely affected really badly in the backswing is that lead shoulder. So that's a stretch all the way over, and then they start having to whip it across. When it comes to the senior golfer, they're going to, and not to throw too many terms at you, but to keep it a lot of them are going to be C postured, be like this. So they're not going to be able to maintain posture. They're not going to be able to rotate, or they'll go into an S posture. They'll be like duck bummed. So either or. The one thing I wish I had done when I'd first gone on tour, and thankfully it was easier to see the video now, but the technology is there. I would suggest if you work with golfers, make sure you get them to bring in their golf swing. Don't do it in the studio or your gym. Just get them to bring a swing in from a lesson with their coach. Because sometimes you might be able to see something that's causing an issue.
They would do a swing with their coach and just get their coach to maybe video them.
Yeah.
Front side, back, or whatever.
Yeah. So you film them from the back and the front generally. And the cameras are perfect now. There's no excuse. The frames per second you can.
When you're looking at that, you're looking for the back head to swing around and you stay focused on the ball in terms of restriction of the neck.
Even though I've worked in golf for like 10 years, it's very difficult to see it in regular speed. So I'd slow it right down. Coach's eye or one of the, even you just slowly go across and watch what they're doing. They'll do all sorts of things. The one thing when it comes to, I've seen issues even on tour too, and there's one area I will not ever go into, do not coach their golf swing. Don't say, hey, try this. The coach is their driver. He's the driver of the coach, and then everyone else in the team, the fitness, medical, their nutritionist, their mind coach, they're the helpers, but their golf coach, if you cross him, the relationship is done.
It's very hard not to cross over though if you're someone who's educated enough to understand how the golf swing should work.
Yeah.
The coach is not in a position where they can't.
Yeah.
You're like, oh well, there's actually a limitation here somewhere that's causing a problem.
Yeah.
Then they're not going to even come and see you, and that's why
Yeah.
it happens.
That's the biggest problem. So hopefully these old school
Pros are
donkeys, they are donkeys, start to phase out. Because yes, a physical limitation, TPIs, they need to a little bit more robust research, but end of the day, if you can't move your hip, you're not going to be able to load it. You're gonna all the swing faults. I'd just politely ask him to change golf coach. We've one elite amateur, I won't say who they are, and their coach broke a leg or something, so they went to a new coach. This golfer cupped their wrist. Like there's a lot of debate with that, but she cupped the wrist and they brought it back to neutral and her golf swing fell apart. So it's interesting sometimes the changes that they can make. People give out to Padraig for changing his golf swing, but his desire for expertise or for perfection is what drives him to. They're all chasing the unicorn. The most interesting thing is no golf swing is the same. We cannot repeat the same golf swing every time. They generally do it better closer, the pros, but the AMs, you'll see all sorts of things. I think more problems happen in the downswing from an explosive point of view, because that's when we start going through impact. So for me, that lead hip internal rotation in a right-handed golfer is extremely important, because all the forces are being drawn towards that hip, and then there's going to 75% roughly of their body mass is going to go through that left foot. And you'll see all sorts of, they'll try bending knees, they're turning feet out, and Tiger also used to train with the Orlando Magic at Isleworth playing basketball, and he loved to Olympic lift, and he loved to do other things too. But
How was his internal rotation there in his hip?
I'd say it's not good. I feel so sorry for him because he's like a lab rat, and he's the media. I mean, everyone got excited last week. It was the Open, and he's in contention. He's tied for the lead halfway through, and everyone's like, it's amazing how one athlete can move the needle in a sport. I had a job on professional golf because of him. Everyone that's on tour is because he moved the needle.
I was there last week. I was at the Open.
Yeah.
It was a joke. Like,
Yeah.
everyone was in.
Yeah. But he abused his body. Maybe he overtrained, he overlifted. He used to go and do a full workout 6 o'clock in the morning, tee off at 7 something, or maybe 5 in the morning.
You say the majority of the top golfers in the world are overtrained. The demands that they
Yes.
put on
Yeah.
eventually, it's going to catch up with the majority of
Yeah.
them.
Because you add jet lag, no sleep. The hardest thing, I actually need, I was going to reach out to the guy that wrote that Why We Sleep. I know there's a lot of sleep code, but he was talking about in his book that was just released, and I didn't even realize that I used to travel with them. If you sleep in a hotel, it's a foreign bed, or it's an Airbnb or an apartment or something like that, half your brain doesn't switch off. So you're in a state of fight or flight for those 24 hours. And now I don't know if it gets better as the week goes on, or do you get used to traveling, but the travel that's expected of these guys is incredible. Now, you're lucky if you're a top guy, you're going to fly around in a private jet. Yeah.
When you're talking about the likes of golfers, we've seen Tiger's transition. I talked to Guy, I think he's doing a bit of rehab with him.
Yeah.
What is surgery-wise, what's the background common of some of these golfers? Is it common, like, for every golfer to probably have a surgery?
Of some variety. Some of them will swerve it, but some won't. Hip labral surgeries, disectomies, fusions. A couple have had a disc replacements. They seem to be going down that road. Podrick had a disc replacement. I'm not telling you guys anything that wasn't in the he had a disc replacement because he had good flexibility through his neck, but that's all down to Liam being so strict with his movement pattern work. And one of the things Liam does is, if Podrick goes into the gym, there's a jump mat, so he checks his vertical. And before the session, so whatever number comes out, and he does a second and third time. If he sees the numbers plummet, session over. Or if I know he's getting tired, Liam and I will. Well, Liam's with him for a long time, so because I'm junior to Harrington, he won't sometimes. He knows I know what I'm doing, but he'll take it from Liam's advice that he needs to. Like Padre worked really hard at the Irish Open, and he was digging a hole in the range. But it's just that quest for perfection. Wrist as well. You're gonna. I haven't spoken about it, but the trifibrocartilage complex in the left wrist is a big problem. The problem we have in this country is there isn't a golf-specific wrist surgeon. So if I hurt my wrist, I don't play much golf, but if I hurt my wrist for anything, even working, I will fly to Leeds and see Doug Campbell. You can see him on a consult basis. So he runs a hand and wrist clinic in Leeds. I sent a tennis player over to him, and it was done in a day. The MRI was done here. He was sent, saw Doug, injected, and all done in a day.
When you're looking at these guys, like, what is obviously they're playing their sport being playing golf. And when you were talking about the off-season this year being the longest off-season with the 2 months, are you thinking professionals?
I'm talking amateurs. Amateurs, because they couldn't even go out and play.
Yeah, most of them don't even think about playing all the winter.
No.
Yeah.
No, a lot of them are fair weather.
So they're moving
Yeah.
the cold every single shot.
Yeah. So that's why it's been so hard over the last couple of years. Certainly the European tour has gotten stretched. It's in South Africa, it's in China, it's all over the place. I think the PGA Tour is actually going to make it easier for their professionals now, because those of you who mightn't have seen, the schedule came out last week or the week before. They're finishing the end of August. So they used to have 4 playoff events, now there's 3, and they finish the end of August, which will potentially mean that the players can take 6 weeks to 2 months off and then play some of what we call the fall series. So they play in November maybe. So the periodization and conditioning is very hard with the pros. Now take for instance Francesco Molinari, that I've worked with him over a number of years. His strength and conditioning coaches and has done a fantastic job. Fran was playing in Illinois at John Deere, comes second, flies over in a chartered jet, but he still has 6 hours of time zone. So some players are more robust. Some of them try to take sleeping pills, and I don't think there's any. We don't go into deep REM. We don't go into deep sleeping. They're fooling themselves. You think you come up fresh in the middle of lunchtime. You're like,
Like what Alan was saying yesterday, when you're drunk and you think you're asleep, and you wake up.
Shane, obviously, like I followed your career,
Yeah.
your development in through here, and like I've met Liam and I've sat
Yeah.
down with him for lunch, and I know he's very thorough. What sort of, like, when you're looking at cognitive function, what sort of approach do they do nutritionally? Like you're talking about jet lag, but
Orico looks after Padraig's performance nutrition.
Oracle?
Orico, an Irish company. What's his name? Yeah, Sligo as well. I'm trying to think of They run bloods on Padraig every 3 weeks. They know when he's going to get sick. And interesting with the heart rate variability, which I know has been discussed. Maybe I think maybe Alexander spoke about it yesterday. Liam told me some of the heart rate variability didn't match up when the player got sick, or his athletes got sick. They were registering high, but then they got sick. I don't know the ins and outs. There's a lot of confidential stuff with Orco that I don't know, but I know they know when he's going to get sick, so they can lower his workload.
But you've got like Porrick at one end of the extreme, and you've got these Shane Lowry's before they made
Yeah.
this transition.
Yeah.
They were amateur and trying to keep on to
Yeah.
the card, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? How are they, you know?
I think the normal amateur, or say the normal professional or amateur, they don't hydrate well enough. They don't eat clean on the planes. Some of the younger players will drink. Some of the senior golfers are gonna drink, and they might go on a golf trip and they're dehydrated the next day.
So for trying to obviously work back into the senior golf and try
Yeah.
to get that sort of target market, how are you supposed to sell them something or get them to buy into something when they're so routine based in something they've done for probably 20, 30 years, never done mobility, probably very few of them take golf lessons.
Yeah.
They don't care about nutrition. They just want to play 9, 18 holes and have 3 or 4 points afterwards. How are you supposed to get into that market?
You got to start small. The thing that's going to attract them in, and I mean, Damien and Phil were talking about the business side of it. Generally, they'll want to play without pain, so you got to hook them in that way, or they'll want to hit the ball further. They just want distance.
Longevity and performance is what you're trying to.
Inevitably, yeah, but they won't. It's not sexy to them.
Yeah.
They just want to go and play with their mates.
The people interested in pain are only the people that can't get out of the golf course.
Yeah.
So you want to sell a emotion that will drive the ball further, not
Yeah.
shots off your.
When I get them in, they're generally for pain. I'm lucky. They'll come in for pain. I'll get them out of pain, and then I'll usually put them on performance.
To get them recurring back to you,
Yeah.
because that's the challenge for that business
Yeah.
model. Have you done any talks, Shane, in golf clubs?
I haven't had to, but I was lucky where I was standing because
Obviously,
yeah.
you're in a position, but if you did
If I was going to a golf club and we'll go through the screening I'd make it very interactive. I'd sit them down, get them all to bring the golf clubs in, check and see that. Just pick 1 or 2 things. Usually it'll be thoracic rotation. They're like, can't get there, and so fine. Generally, check their hip. The seated hip rotation is handy because if they don't want to stand, they're being awkward. Then just pick one thing and show them how to mobilize their thoracic spine. The problem we have is the overtraining you talk about there. If they don't have good prerequisites of movement, and golf is the most asymmetrical sport in the world, and they keep laying on it and it's trying to Olympic lift, and they can't even. They're just going to keep hammering on their back. I would probably for the senior, I'd probably go and talk to the more elitist golf clubs.
Yeah, well, that's what I've done in a couple of talks, like been in other clubs, so
Yeah.
I'm a member of Biomechanical, so
Yeah.
But trying to get in and actually get to a senior golfer has been very hard, whereas the guys who were coming in and looking and talking to me between the age of 30 and 40.
Yeah. So the senior ones are not doing it.
No, they're
That's
not.
interesting. Funny, they generally have more. They generally have more money because they're in pensions and retired, and they've done well business-wise. I think we have to change the mindset.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I think with people going like Padraig and somebody like Jerry Kelly's turned senior, he's in very good shape.
Yeah.
With these guys, they're going to be more athletes. Like Padraig will say he's in better shape now than he was when he was 20-something.
Yeah,
We need to change the mindset. TPI is trying to do it, but I think TPI's influence on the European market hasn't been as good as they would have probably thought. It's a great qualification. In the States, you get all these referrals, but here,
I don't want to when there's no follow-up really.
Yeah.
Like it's not, I didn't find it very interesting at all, to be honest with you.
yeah. So regarding back pain and why they would get it, you can put numerous adjectives, words, swear words in front of those. Most senior golfers will not warm up. It's you're even in Portmarnock, one of the exclusive golf clubs. No women allowed. I hope that changes because it's going to be it would be a great venue for the Irish Open.
Yeah.
They drive in, you hear them screeching, run to the tee, and then it's like, oh, does it take you 9 holes to warm up? Oh yeah, it actually does. Some get coaching, some don't get coaching. Old donkey coaches, they won't see the physical limitations. So sometimes if the coach doesn't want anything to do with you, you just keep working. Because it will be successful with your input, and the coach will be thinking, well, what's going on here? I don't think many senior golfers train. Full stop. I think Charlie Weingroff made a comment, I think it might have been one of the World Golf Fitness Summits, he thinks golfers have the lowest training age across the board. So in their development of knowing their bodies and knowing how to train and not train. And they are just so tight. They're stuck at a desk all day, and then they expect to go out and play that explosive sport without injuring themselves.
Jim, when you're looking at that, obviously, in the physical limitations, are you looking, what do you find? Do you find it's neurological weakness, you start activating them to get better movement? Or is it you getting connective tissue?
Generally, it's the joint and muscle function. The joints are so tight. Very rarely, I don't think I've come across a senior golfer that I would describe as hypermobile. Bar Rachel's. Take for instance, like I could show you videos. If you take Joachim Niemann, who's a young Chilean player, just come on tour, you see him at Impact. He's like this. Look at his Instagram. It won't last. I think he's working with Joey D or one of the guys. Yeah. Cameron Champ, young kid, won on the web.com, which is a second tier. He's 18, 19 years, working Sean Foley. The kid hit it 450 yards 2 weeks ago when he won on the web.com. The problem we have now, because we're going to go to an aging population, and hopefully the golfing population will increase. The kid's ball speed, so they measure it with a TrackMan, which is a device, has gotten much smaller. They can measure, everything's measurable now. And then the club head speeds are humongous. They're but they have a Ferrari engine, but a microstructure is going to fall apart very, very quickly. So normally what I do for the buy-in of working with the senior golfer, the old boys, is the corrective work that they do at home. I kind of overlap and make sure that they do it as a warm-up as well. I'll tailor it down, even if it's only 5 minutes and they're prepping the body. So what I've seen, we used to have an associate with us, and he had an elite scratch golfer, one of the girls who was in the local club near us. He gave her an 1.5-hour program. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? She's not going to do it. Padraig wouldn't even do it. Like, it has to be clear and concise. So what I generally do is I'll overlap their corrective work. Yes, of course they need strength and conditioning, but they need good movement first. That'll first and foremost, that's gonna help them. And then I don't do any strength and conditioning. I'm not a chiropractor or a physio that goes into that field. And I know there's a lot of physios in Ireland that have gone like, okay, I don't want to do the manual work. It's easier just to train people. I don't do that. I send them out. Robbie Cannon works with Shane and numerous other pros, and I just send the strength and conditioning or somebody locally if they don't want to travel. We just can't. The first thing we got to do is no harm. It is difficult working with the coach. That's probably one of the hardest. The nutritionists are easy if you refer them out. The S&C coaches I've worked with have all been easy to work with, but the coach is the one that might be lacking behind. No, we'll just coach him out of this. But the coaches that know what's happening and then they can see the physical limitations and they work together, the player's going to do much, much better. When they start swinging around the physical limitations is when they're going to get injured. And it's
On tour, is it much more of a old style coaching, or is it kind of?
there's some old style coaches, but they're getting better. Some of them are really good. Some of them are very, very easy. Sean Foley's very approachable. I really like his attitude. He wants to know what are you working on. At the end of the day, if it was purely golf specific, your training, you've got to ask the coach what they want to work on. What is that client, man or woman, struggling with? Because I have some good senior female golfers too. Some of them are single handicap and their husbands are struggling around the 18 and they're off singles. But they always ask the coach what they're working on because it's going to lead to big, big problems if you.
Senior females that apply themselves quicker than males at that.
They're much better clients, yeah.
They want to work it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about the female clients, because I remember Jan used to be when we were in Leopardstown.
Yeah.
And I have a number of clients now recently now in their 60s, golfers. And I've gone down to Leopardstown, driving range and golf club on a Friday. And there's about 60, 70 women, all are playing golf. Like that down there. Imagine how many girls are being popped. But the question ultimately, as I said, is they're probably the ones that will, no different than the gym. Females sometimes invest a bit more, and they're both fellas invented it. Don't need any more. One question for you. When you're looking at obviously the amount they're invested in the golf club, and I've talked to John about how much people are paying to be a member of a golf club. How much is a set of clubs these days? How much are these lads? I know I've seen lads going out with Big Bertha and all that sort of stuff, but just as I'm saying is when you're trying to create that story, they're investing in the
I would say some
machinery, but not the driver.
the Indian and not the arrow.
Yeah, them being the driver of the car.
Yeah. You're looking 1,500, probably $2,000.
And,
I have people that are low socio background, and like I don't even know how. You ask them what golf clubs are playing. I'm like, how the hell did you afford them?
0% APR these days.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
We're doing anything.
But the
Yeah.
markets them constantly. If they're
Yeah.
inserted in the magazine everywhere, it's just
Yeah. I don't think the pros would change their golf clubs as much as, like Henrik Stenson was using, or I think he's still using a 3-wood he used for the last 10, 15 years. Just fits them. The manufacturers want them to. For instance, Nike. They should have just stuck to clothes. They went in the golf hardware business, and most of the golfer, I'm going to say most, if not all of them had a decrease in performance when they chose. It happened to Rory, Thurban Olsen. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but when Nike admitted that they were coming out of the business, which was a very smart move, and then go more in the clothing, those players, like say take Ross Fisher, who I know very well, he changed. So as soon as he knew he could change his golf clubs, he went to Mizuno. I think he changed his ball to a Titleist. He changed his putter back to Scotty Cameron, and I think he used Mizuno irons that first week, and he nearly won the tournament. He lost in the playoff to Alex Levy last year, or the year before. It was amazing how many players sacrificed their performance for money. The Nike golf clubs were shocking. They got better towards the end, but it was.
They were getting Bridgestone even make the ball. They
Yeah.
wouldn't make their own ball.
Yeah, Tiger's ball was definitely Bridgestone.
Yeah.
With the Nike stamp on it. Just do it. And his irons were definitely Mizuno, because I think that's where he started.
They were mirrored.
Yeah.
Your man had made the heads.
They made him through, and everything is custom fitted. So you're talking about 1,500, and then we're lucky that, for me, one of the best club fitters in Ireland is Derek Murray up in Four Golf. He's extremely good. But that's not where I would put, if a senior golfer's taking up the sport, say they're retiring and they want something to play with their grandkids, just get them off the shelf, and then, unless they're tall. John there would probably need half an inch on his golf clubs. If he takes it off the rack, he's going to be in problem. An inch? Was it an inch? Yeah. It'll make a massive difference.
The nature of obviously when looking at the senior golfer, the link between corporate management and golf days.
Yes.
You know, you get all these golf days from either from fundraisers or
Pro-Ams.
inter-companies
Yeah.
having games together where these guys have not really played. Now they're coming out to play a game for the first time in
Yeah.
a while. You find those guys coming to you, or when you're looking in terms of for yourself, and person that you're trying to attract, what would you say is his pain points, or what is his?
I think it comes back to what I said earlier. They want to hopefully want to play without pain. That you got to target it. Like, want to beat your friends. You're looking for taglines. I think longevity and performance, they don't give a shit. But they do want to win prizes. They do want to win the monthly medals. The money, like AIB, or no, not AIB, Anglo-Irish, the bank that put us in a lot of bother for the recession, they spend €500,000 on fucking golf balls for their golf days. Here you are. Big money to play the corporate stuff. The corporate golfer, if you can get them in, they're extremely good. One corporate client flew me somewhere. I won't say where because it'll give away where he is from. He flew me down for a week to take care of him. He is a senior golfer. I know one businessman in New York, one of the guys that I know, he's Canadian, but he's in Florida. He kept saying no to him, and then he said, name your price. So you're better off getting these, like, even the normal senior golfer, doesn't matter where they're from, the female equivalent of the senior golfer is going to be a much easier one to work with. They're a lot more diligent, they'll listen.
Your recreational golfer, is he once a week? Or how often is he getting out? Obviously you got the guys who are retired.
Yeah.
I had like clients and they were going once a week, and it was the K club and your members, it was like 5 hours, and then there was guilt because he never got to see the kids, and then this one day he was trying to get him. So
I would say some of the, depending on age group, some of them play 4 or 5 times a week. Some of them will do it for business purposes too. They'll take. Yeah.
But the reason I think though that I think I'm finding easy to work with 35, 40-year-olds is that they are the ones that are willing to invest in the game again.
Yeah.
Whereas I think they're like dipping into the 50, 60, 70-year-olds that are there now, the generation don't like spending money.
No.
So like you're getting that maybe 1 out of
Yeah.
10, 15 that will potentially look at investing in the game.
Yeah.
Like I used to be a pro, I came back out of it, and you look at them when they buy a kit, they're coming in with jumpers that were older than me.
Yeah.
Like they're not interested in their hardware, they're not interested in their physical appearance, or anything like that.
No, I think you're 100% right. I think if we target the 30 to 50-year-olds now, when they become seniors, I think the next generation of senior golfers will take care of their body. Like even the senior golfer now on the professional tour, compared to the next setter, is going to be totally different. I'm going to give you a mix mash of a little bit of TPI, and then a little bit of DNS, and a little bit of what I'd like to see. So if you didn't run a formal screen, for me, breathing is very, very important. A lot of these old boys and women don't use their diaphragms. They're going to have some of them will have incontinence, so the pelvic floor is shot, or they've had C-sections. If they can't maintain their breathing, it's going to feed into their posture. It's going to swing into. It's going to affect their swinging club fitting. For me, I always check if a golfer walked in here and I had 2 minutes, I would always check their T-spine mobility seated, and then I'll check their left hip information or the lead hip. I wish golfers would spend less money on their hardware, the clubs, and spend more money with us. Because a $5 golf swing won't be fixed by a $500 driver. One of my colleagues on tour said, which is 100% correct. But they're constantly barraged. If you watch the coverage during the Sky Sports golf, it's barraged with hardware. Now, thankfully, somebody like Joey D was interviewed by the Golf Channel during the Open. I think we have Air Sports, so I think it was shown on that. So he was on it, and all the success he's had with Dustin Johnson, who's an absolute beast, and Brooks Koepka. Like Joey's been lucky with the golfers that come in too. Some of these are genetic freaks. So what it is, TPI have 12 screens now, and they're in their level 1. If I'm looking at the senior golfer, so this one, pelvic tilt. If they have a history of back pain, they won't be able to do it. They have no perception of where that pelvis is in space. And even if you put them down into a cats and dogs position, they won't know where it is. A lot of time, if I have to train them in that position, I ask them to use their husband or their own I get them to use a long mirror because they have to get the biofeedback. Because if they can't tilt their pelvis, they won't be able to get out of that C posture. They won't be able to get the S posture. And if they can't posterior pelvic tilt, if they early extend towards the ball, so if you hit, they'll start going towards the ball that way. If they can't posterior pelvic tilt, it's going to cause major issues. These two fit very well into hurling and other rotary sports. So the pelvic rotation test is I am going to keep my top half quiet, and then I'm going to rotate the lower half. Now, the hypermobile female, if you hold their top half, and it'll improve their rotation because they have generally some stability issues where the tight old man senior is not going to do anything. They'll just be like... The old boys tend to be very good at their short game. They don't hit the ball too far, but they practice. The one thing I would say to amateur golfers, if they practice more from 100 yards and in, that's where they're going to play much better instead of driving. What they don't see when you're watching the coverage is some of the players, even they might have come first round, second round, not done too much. Third round, they started going up the leaderboard. You won't have seen where they were putting the ball. It's not all fairway, but it's never perfect.
Shame with those guys that have limited thoracic rotation, you look to shorten the lever and get them to maybe play off irons as opposed to using the driver until you can work on improving that?
No, I'll let them play. They generally won't get there anyway. They physically can't even pull the driver back. So,
attempt to try and, someone try to whip it around a bit further than what their mobility allows.
that's one other thing the amateur guys do. The pros hit it about 70%, 80%. The amateurs give it a good old lash. If you can slow them down, I wouldn't change their golf selection. I'd just hammer their T-spine until
moving, I think just lifting their arms.
Yeah.
They don't rotate.
Yeah, they'll start going. Yeah, they'll hammer away at it. I always check pelvic tilt when it comes to their back pain, and then they'll have a little shake and bake. They're like. But the pros do this well. Their ability to separate top half from bottom half, and then they start the sequence down. The hips will start down, and then they'll start. Where the old senior golfer will move one body part, and they're moving like that.
Shane, when you're doing the seated rotation, do you do it with your hands like this, or do you say your foot apart?
TPI has changed that over the years. So what I would do I'd put the golf club behind them or a dowel. Most of you have dowels in the gym. If you put a dowel behind you, the way that they'll cheat on a seated T-spine is they'll keep their knees apart and they'll start moving the pelvis. So I'll tend to I think TPI wants us to lock this over now, or you make sure you put something between their knees so they can't cheat. Yeah. There's not a senior golfer that I've screened that didn't have a T-spine issue. And generally it's to the left. We used to measure our pros with the dynamometers, which measure all the range of motion, and most of it was left-sided.
It ties into what you're saying earlier about the bent over. As you bent over, you can't rotate.
Yeah. So you flex those T-spine joints, it won't be.
Shane, when you do the single leg balance, are you looking for necrosis, or are you looking for...
I'm a bit strict when I do my single leg balance, because if they have back pain, the single leg balance is going to be down. And if we know with the senior population, they're going to lose their balance. So I'm very careful how I say if it's a 7-year-old, I'm going to put them somewhere near a wall. I don't want them falling over. But even getting them to brush their teeth, single leg balance, their left single leg balance is far more important than the right one because of that transfer of 75% weight to the leg. And then this is a no-go. You've screened golfers, you'll be like this. They should touch the wall. They'll be like. So the only option they have is they go what they call over the top. The arms go up and out, loose posture, or they'll go that way. And generally, if both their lats are tight, it means they've absolutely zero core. The lats are doing the work for them. The 90-90 test isn't as important, but it's interesting when you look at them here and here in normal posture, and then you put them in golf posture, it changes. It generally stops the pattern. Those three are extremely important because you want, so that, I don't know why they put that picture. That's about 60 degrees. So you're looking at, when you're screening them, you'll see them here, see how far they can rotate, and then check it on the other leg, and then downswing. It's amazing some of the things you'll see. I've also seen people cheat it. As strict as you are in testing them, and then you passively check their internal, external rotation, and they're like, oh, they actually do have a limitation. Because if they've a limited internal rotation on the downswing, they're going to start to, that's probably the main reason why the senior golfer get back pain, because they start going back here to get a reverse spine angle, and they're sitting back on the facets. And they'll say, oh, I only get back pain after golf. They don't get it during, but they'll have irritated those facet joints. And let's be honest, most of them are going to be hitting around 100, 120 shots, if we're lucky. If they're single handicap, it'll probably be 78-ish, 80. Be happy to break 80, I'd say. If they sit down, their ability to access their glutes. Tiger's glutes were, I don't know if they were switched on or switched off. He's had some weird press. He's had some things that he said in the press I found very strange, and then the non-manual therapists, the pain scientists, the physios, they jump on it, oh, his sacrum's not out of place. And Tiger's only probably saying what he's been told. Now, I've never worked with Tiger, so I'm not to blame for any of it. When it comes to back pain of any golfer, I use a Mackenzie extension, and I suggest, even if you're only fitness, and we're lucky in this country, in the UK, we can touch the patients and cue them. Where in the States, you're going to get sued for even stretching them. In Chicago, they have to, because I was doing an FMS seminar, they have to give them the tiger tails and stuff. Here's your ball, and you get sued. I mean, it's ridiculous. Can't even hands-on cue. Now, there's lots of, Mackenzie's you can do in weekends. It goes into a number of depths, but generally a quick and easy way to check that is if you suspect a disc bulge, say they've come in a little bit. The hard thing when it comes to diagnosing, and some of you, if you're just purely fitness, you mightn't have the expertise. Don't underestimate what a slight disc bulge will do. They'll start getting referral into the hip, where you've checked the hip, it's clear, and say, no, pain isn't right there. So the disc bulge will generally, hip pain is the first thing they'll get if it's a disc bulge. Get them to hold that position for a minute or two, and then the leg pain should start to subside into the, so if they have a little bit of disc bulge, then the senior population get more of a stenosis. They're going to have narrowing of the nerves as they go through from the disc and the bony wear and tear. And they'll generally tell you that the more they walk, the more they're going to start getting back pain. And then they get a thing called neurogenic claudication, where they start getting cramping in their calves. So it's not a magnesium issue, or they are hydrated, it's just the nerve is getting near to claudication. So the nerve is getting compressed. It's similar, it's like a stenosis. Sometimes it's hard to get these. You say you have to send them for spinal surgery. This works really quickly if they have a disc bulge. Stuart McGill's found one thing with all his studies since he's been looking at. They need, for Mackenzie extension to work well, they have to have about 75% hydration of the disc. So if you've seen a disc bulge in an MRI and it's really small, the Mackenzie extension is not going to really work. But you will see plenty of physiotherapists, because Mackenzie is a physiotherapy thing. They'll do constant floppy push-ups in that position. They'll drive where my hands are. They'll drive all the way up. it might work in the beginning, but you start doing that enough, you're going to irritate the facets in the back. I still, like the staunch McKenzie practitioners I've met, they still can't give me an answer for why you would continue. As soon as I see the leg or hip pain gone, the McKenzie extension's done. So no, if I've somebody that I suspect a disc bulge, I will get them to do McKenzie extension before they go out, or they can even do it on the golf course. I'm just not a big fan of the keep hammering away at it. I always check. So there is some holes to the TPI screen, and that's what I'm going to add here. The side bridge endurance is very important, and it seems to be becoming more and more important. If there's a 5% difference between either of the sides, it's going to spell back pain, it's going to spell groin pain, hip pain. So for any of your athletes, any of your clients, if they have a huge difference or any difference between the side bridge, it's going to be a problem. Ideally, you want about 60 seconds bilaterally. So what functional capacity do you think we see in the senior golfer? I'm going to say if we could draw it, it'll be down here, and that orange box would be a little bit bigger. That's what we're all trying. It doesn't matter if you're medical or fitness, you were trying to improve their capacity. And then you talk about if we overtrain them and then they go play golf, then that pyramid's all starts to. I hope the young kids coming through do focus on getting their manual therapy, because golf is very tough on the body. 80% of the soft tissue, 80% of the issues I've seen with golf, irrespective of age, has been soft tissue, chronic soft tissue. Now, I'm not saying it's adhesions or scar tissue, but it's lack of tissue mobility, ability to contract and relax and stabilize the joint. And I use the word athlete. Yes, a senior golfer is an athlete. I try and treat all my patients like athletes. I try and get them all to do exercises, show them how to pelvic tilt, show them how to hip hinge. Because at the end of the day, somebody say, well, do you need to lift light? But if their grandkid is 35 kilos, it's a decent weight to be deadlifting. Or for them anyway.
Shane, with the lads obviously going around the carts,
Yeah.
and then sitting back into their shoulder
Yeah.
position of the hips and then looking for extension.
Yeah. They're nearly going to, the problem for the guys in the carts is it's so counterproductive, is because they're going to have to keep warming up. Okay, maybe they've hit it. It's different. Okay, hit a drive. That's the highest velocity they're going to have to. Then, if their second shot's a 3-wood, that's another high velocity shot. And then, okay, it mightn't mean too much putting. But if they go, I've seen injury. Well, most of the injuries, like picking up a pen, toilet cistern, they bend over slightly. Yeah, they're often injured. It mightn't necessarily be on that. Very few injure themselves on the golf swing. It's the small little things. And that's why all those little things like picking up the golf ball, or they'll squat down, they're trying to get the ball. So as a fitness point of view, I always want them to be able to hip hinge. I say, why don't you just pick up the ball like that? It's easier. Or if they've a little bit of sciatica down their left leg, just for example, then I'll show them how to deadlift in the right. So I know that they're not going to put any tension on the nerve. Sorry, that's a bit of formatting from the PowerPoint. So what the Prague School has found that generally when we go into injury, we compensate and we start going back into newborn posture. So if we have a neurological, so we have stroke and other conditions that affect us, we have obviously a lot of motor neuron and MS in this country too. So we start going back into newborn postures. Yeah, most senior golfers are swinging around compensations. I've never had one come in and say they're perfect. The thing that worries me now is the younger golfers that are coming into me, 13, 14, 15, and they're an absolute mess. And if they're heavily loaded, squatting, deadlifting, and they can't move their joints around. The biggest question we have, and nobody seems to be able to answer, doing golfish exercises in the gym. So med ball throws, chops and lifts. I don't know if they transfer to sport. There's
Well, their sport is creating dysfunction, so
Yeah.
the gym should be about
the gym should be about balancing them, and the gym should be about giving them the longevity and making that function.
Still more compensation happening in the gym though, due to them lack of
Yeah.
functional movement.
Yeah, I'd rather eat them out. I'd try and get them out of the other pattern slowly. No matter, as long as they play golf, they're going to have asymmetries. So as I always say to a golfer when they come in, they're never going to be perfect. But if it's a shitty hip, all the screen in the world, like improving it, you have to go after it.
Is there a functional way that you think that is going to be more beneficial if you've got someone coming in who's completely imbalanced, can't move? They obviously try training them maybe like in a unilaterally position.
I like, unilateral training.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I've done that. Like I worked with Brian here for a while, like, and I struggled with my mobility massively, and with my hips, like, and then I took a break from training, went back in and just trained unilaterally for my golf swing, and the difference in it was like huge.
I would say most golfers unilateral trainings, but yeah. And because of the amount of our population that have CAM and FAI, it's safer. I can't believe the amount of Gaelic players that are still, they're still ass to grass squatting, and we don't have the hips for it. We like,
Especially them we're hurlers due to the nature of their sport as well. They need that control. They haven't
Yeah.
necessarily got.
they come in and they're like, oh, I can't. And you can generally tell which way the hurlers are funny because I've seen a few of them now, and I start applying some of the golf principles, and I say, oh, I think you can hit better that way. I said, how the hell do you know that? Well, you can just start seeing there. I said, there's your favorite side. I've obviously done FRC as well. I like mixing DNS and FRC from a mobility point of view. I think they're both fantastic structures and systems to get good prerequisites of motion, because these two ball and socket joints, like, we don't move our shoulders through range of motion into maybe we go play golf. You're not going to reach much during the day if they're stuck at the desk. When you add proper core stabilization, diaphragm, pelvic floor on top of some of the FRC things, it's like lighting it up with the nitric oxide. It makes it much better. What DNS, sorry about that, that's just because we changed from keynote to, but respiration, core stability, quality support, body awareness. Actually, that's one thing I learned about proprioception in college, and then it wasn't until I went to do DNS. It's amazing you look at joint positional sense. The best golfers in the world generally know exactly where they are. And I think through good training and good coaching, we can help them with their body awareness. And I think good training in medical is all about neuroplasticity. We have to get the brain to change for positive. And sometimes you also have to tell your senior golfer that there could be a negative effect to what you do.
Yeah, I think that is a big thing though, isn't it? Genuinely, of the negative effect of what they're actually trying to achieve from their body.
Yeah.
And they actually can't do it.
No, it's not happening. I never got to meet Carl Lewitt, or Levitt, or it depends on the pronunciation. He's the first generation of Prague Rehab School. He was big on breathing, and then Pavel Kolash, who's the developer of DNS. Thankfully, DNS is done all over the world. It's much easier to get to their courses. As SFRC is. I'm surprised he hasn't come back. Come back to Dublin. I was actually shocked how little Irish people were at the seminar in May. I know Damien was at Spina. Yeah, I think there was 5 Irish people at the seminar.
Really?
I think 5 or 6. I think that was it. There was loads of people from different places. This is what most of your senior golfers are going to come in with. They're going to be rib flared, big belly. I'm amazed that some of them can get around 18 holes. It's amazing. And there was a Royal Dublin was playing against the Heath last weekend, and they did an over 60 competition. I'd love to have taken pictures of all those guys. Some of them are single handicap, but some of them were some big guys.
And is breathing a big focus then in regards to professionals then?
I think the way DNS was first brought out, it was all the reflex locomotion and voided therapy. I think it's gone a little bit more exercise-based now, so I think they can see the pattern. I wouldn't tell a golfer, hey, breathe in and hit the golf, no, but from a gym point of view and movement pattern, I'll definitely start to sink. I would never go, hey, breathe in, push your tongue to that side and swing the...
I think they just do it for relaxation.
Yeah.
Have a look at Jason Day Garcia,
Yeah.
bigger range.
Yeah. And it's actually from the getting their system to relax down, and I know Luke talked about it earlier, the meditation and breathing. I wish more players, I've worked with 50 different pros, I don't think many of them meditate. Yeah. It's a taboo. There's some very old school thing. Breathing and just get the whole system to relax down. I remember one player was in contention in Gleneagles, and two of us were treating him because he was the last one of the day. He was just like, well, let's go to dinner quicker. So we were both treating him, speed up the process. And I've never seen such a tight individual. I was young to the game then, so I didn't want to say anything, but his muscle, he blew up the next day. It was very interesting. I always remember that. I was like, okay, could I have done anything? Maybe not, but he obviously wasn't handling his stress. But they're generally, you ask somebody to breathe in, it's going to be, or if a Pilates or yoga teacher asks them to go, the bigger their base of support is, the more pressure they can put onto the. And I generally start, like the CEOs that you see that are the CEOs that you see that are playing golf, that are high stressed, the breathing and relaxation and meditation. Probably most golfers, if the senior golfer you bring them in, you're going to be doing mobility 6 months or a year. We had one of our players was so tight we only started in the lower half. His toe touch was here. He was 20, I'm trying to think how old he would have been then. 28
That's
or
what I found as well also, due to aging population, less is more kind of thing.
Yeah.
Get all that matters is that consistency.
Yeah. You're better off them doing 4 things properly than, yeah. No, I get very little complaints now. I give them 4 good things, and I like the DNS exercise and the FSC. So if you can make a compound movement, or if they're doing a few things, so T-spine and a couple of other things, getting a few joints in play, controlled, then they're more likely. And the important thing is when you do give them a program, make sure you, whether or not it transfer, make sure you, this is your swing fall, this is what you're doing, this is why you give them this exercise. Or you tell them, hey champ, you're going to hit it harder, you're going to hit it further, this is why you're doing it. Damien touched on earlier why, you also need to tell the client why you're doing what you're doing. I mean, that's they're just like big-bellied. It's amazing the amount of older men that have incontinence that won't say it. Women are a lot more open, they'll say it, but the men. It might necessarily be they're weeing themselves in their underpants. It's more that they're having trouble with the flow. You see, I'm sure most of us have been in the toilet with a man, and you could, like an older guy, and it stop, start. So his pelvic floor is starting to deteriorate. So even as a side, I don't tell them that, I just keep working there. If you get that pelvic floor and diaphragm to pressurize like a canister, it makes a massive difference. Or even if what I've learned in the last couple of years with the DNS, when I started like 2011, but it's the physios that I like to get on well with, they're very hand firm with I'll hold their ribs down. It's amazing the change in pressure if you force the rib cage down into the proper position. This is Robert Lardner. He's one of the DNS instructors, but I think the quote, we talk about less is more. It's about most back pain patients overbrace. You'll ask them, there's no degree of relaxation, and it's just getting that finite amount of kind of 20-30% where they can maintain their posture. One of the easiest ways to assess breathing is put them in the 3-month position. You'll see it all over the internet. I either use a chair or I'll put my knee. I mean, that's obviously a higher table. My chiropractic table is lower, so I'll put my knee under there and I'll just watch what they're doing. I'll take the ball away and see how they're holding. A lot of people will you'll see hollowing through the inguinal area. They'll start, ribs will start flaring. Some are worse than others.
In regards to programming then, how would you program that for?
I'll give breathing as a start, making sure that they can pressurize the canister.
Is there a specific rep sets? Is there kind of?
I just get them to do it a minute or two, not to overdo it. And those that are stuck at a desk, I'll get them to pressurize into here. The Core 360 belt, hopefully they'll get a European distributor. It's a handy device. It's like a lifting belt, but there's 4 pods on it. 2 go here, and you can move them a little bit, and 2 go here. I get a lot of them to practice doing so you get them to breathe into it. And you have to maintain your pressure against it. TheraBand doesn't necessarily work as good, but you maintain that pressure. If they can breathe out, hold the pressure on the breath out, it's a massive difference to them stabilizing properly. Because I've been put in some DNS positions, and I thought, oh, this is going to be easy, and I was sweating. Neurologically, it was just I don't know why, but this is becoming more common in the senior man. We'd assume that it'll be in postpartum, pregnancy related, but more. This is one of Karen's patients, Joe. He does play a little bit of golf. It's actually very hard to take a good picture of a diastasis recti, but his is like a little worm. It doesn't look bad there, but his rib flare is pretty bad. If you ask him to do a little crunch, it'll get a little bit bigger. The effect is that if you've got the rectus abdominis, the diastasis recti is a separation in it. And if you think about golf and those sling patterns we looked at earlier, they're going to have absolutely zero pressure.
When you're looking at those slings, are you thinking Alexander Lehman or what are you?
No, I'm just talking about their ability to rotate. Yeah, their ability to fire the oblique chain. And that's a better picture. That's not Joe. That's a different. So he's just done a little bit of a. If you can't, it's amazing how much work we do on the back. Foam roll the hamstrings, glutes, back, and if you properly stabilize through here, it's just the load has to go somewhere. It's only going to go to their back. Katie Bowman wrote a book on diastasis recti. The exercises were so on it. This is one exercise Karen and I give. Karen, my wife, sees a lot of pregnant-related care, and then she sees the golfers when I'm not there. That arm is locked, so that's pushing towards the knee, and then Karen will do a slight crunch to the side. So you've locked down that diastasis and then working through that pattern.
Isometrically, so
Just a little crunch, just a small little crunch. Now, with the elderly population, their heads are going to be back in extension, so I always support them either a cushion, or if they're really bad, you're going to have to it's going to be quite a prop. Look, there's, like, you can do LDO, you can do FRC, you can do DNS, you can do all the mobility work, but make sure you do. Like, I used to do reach backs when I first did TPI years ago, but when you go end range and then big dead breath, and it just seems to relax down the nervous system. I like the tripod. Now, with the senior population, you are not going to get them in that position. I have slightly tight hips, played a lot of basketball. I can't get my pelvis into enough. So when I'm doing the tripod with an elderly population, I'll either use a chair, so I'm going to bring them upright, or those of you in the gym, the steppers, the step boxes, I'll bring them up here. So this is where my tripod is. Because I can work on loading. So this is where I talk about compound movement. I generally get them in bare feet, get them loading the foot tripod, get them loading all the way through the foot, and then from a point of view, I'll either use TheraBand to cause a valgus on the knee, so start firing it up. And then if they can sit into the hip, you're getting foot activation, knee, hip, and then thoracic rotation.
Are you using the wall there, so are you at the back leg now?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just my foot, I think. Don't forget what the adductors will do in the hips. The least undertreated area that I've seen across all the sports, Gaelic. And you ask, have they seen somebody? No, they've not touched them. So you can do that, or do your rear foot elevated, where you're starting to just work the adductor, or do whatever you can. Just make sure you work the groin. Rolling patterns, great cook. They're extremely good. They're very hard to do in the older population, because they generally have so many mobility issues through the spine that they can't even roll. But it's a good cue to get them to. I use it with the elderly guys because I'll get them to pressurize through the core, and then I'll get them to slightly push back, so just give them some awareness of where their body is. Or like Spina, I put it anywhere, everyone. Hips are, the one thing I picked up most, and I use a lot of from the FRC system, is the hip circle, so hip cars. Doesn't, unless they've got a real bad impingement, it doesn't seem to, they don't seem to like it very well. But if you could get all your senior golfers doing that, if I was doing a warm-up, I'd definitely have that in it, across the board. If you were doing group training they all have to run their hips through range of motion. If they do have impingement, this exercise is great for both shoulder and hip. If I press down through the knee, press down through the shoulder, pressurize the core, then I can open up like a door hinge. So it's an ipsilateral pattern, and I can start to... It's amazing the amount of golfers, like anyone, they can't put any pressure on the ground. You come up and then lift it down. They start cramping. 90-90 pails and rails, isometrics, they work real well. I have very little, I don't know what you, very little patients you can't get in that position.
Yeah. I think that's depend where they are. But
Yeah. Or you prop them up.
yeah, and again, that weakness is there. So
Yeah.
we can
McGill's hip airplane. Give credit where everyone's credit due, because this is Stuart McGill's exercise, but it's good because you get foot loading. They can start separating pelvis, and I think a lot of hip and groin issues because the athlete's pelvis can't separate from the hip. They move as a block, so that's a great...
You were mentioning about having them barefoot.
Yeah.
Is that something that you
Yeah,
have to
I keep consistently keeping barefoot where I can. Depending on time, so I would rather, if you could instill one thing in your senior golfers, is making sure they warm up, because it gives their nervous system time. They're going to hit the ball further. Ben Langdon did an article on my TPI website. They did an active warm-up, and they all hit it further. It will reduce their injuries. They just need to know why. Hammer them. And hopefully the next generation of senior golfers will be much easier. Langdon, I think his name is. His article is definitely on the TPI. And what most of the players say when we start working with them privately is they get a routine. They see us an hour and a half before. So if they get into a routine, it will help their golf. And a lot of them don't work on their mental side. Nothing changes when a player goes out of form. It's usually confidence. Their putting doesn't. I told patients back Fran Molinari. I knew he was going to win. Not often, but you just know patients or players going to trend.
It's amazing though, the warm-up routine. I work for 8 lads at the Philharmonic, and I got for them to change their warm-up routine, and they didn't understand whether indexes on the first few holes were so low, and because everyone gets out and they cannot move for 4 or 5 holes. Like, so they all done it, and the improvements on their scores alone in the first 4 or 5 holes was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like ridiculous.
Yeah, you gotta tell the old boys it's like pulling the choke. You need to have it ready. For me, from what I tend to, something T-spine mobility, something hip, some rotational control. It could be rolling pattern or whatever you wanted from a neurological point of view. Explosive rotation depends where they're at, but some med ball throws if they get if they're at a higher end club. The US is a little easier because a lot of those high end clubs have gyms on site, so you can go in and just throw a few. It's an amazing amount of amateurs that don't go to the range. I don't understand. Just even hit 15, 20 balls, just warm up. How can they expect their first drive to be perfect and they haven't done anything to warm up? Look, for me, TPI is the leader when it comes to golf screening. Why I did my own seminars from a manual therapy point of view is because you get all this data, and if you're a medical professional, you don't quite know what to do. Or as the quote's always Mike Tyson, it's all fine until you get punched in the face. Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. So I got mentored by a guy that had 15 years experience. I never had a player withdraw from a tournament with my own player withdrew from a tournament with neck pain. Harrington hurt his neck at the Irish Open. He was doing something in the morning, came in, I have 5 minutes to you learn how to, under pressure, how to do those things. But it's putting it together and planning it. I would say if you're training golfers in the off-season, be more aggressive. Their game will start to be fine, and then ask them what they're doing with their coaching. Sometimes they have to change coach. hands-on. Well, I use a lot of ART if you're a manual therapy, massage therapist, and ART with DNS, and an FRC is the other thing I would probably definitely recommend. LDO, I've seen good application of that too, but FRC and LDO are very much bastardized. Everyone thinks they know it until they do the course. I would say the exact same thing. I saw a friend show me some FRC-based stuff before I did the seminar. Like, maybe I picked this up wrong. Or as Damien spoke this morning, perception. We pick it up a little bit differently. And I'm hoping that the numbers don't drop for golf.
Shane, when you're looking at the things that you wouldn't do for these guys, obviously we're looking at what affects his swing. So if we drop a bit of timber off a guy, that changes his rotation, which has changed his timing, which then where the back goes, but also on the back end though, it reduces back pain.
Yeah.
Because the distance from the axis being the spine, the bigger the gut is, the more torque is put on the spine to create more back pain and injury.
That's the biggest catch-22. Take Darren Clark, dropped his weight. The guys at Edgecote Gym, like, does it relevant? They trained him online. He had absolutely huge drop of weight. Through his timing, it's not their fault. He dropped so much weight. I don't know what the total was in it, but 4 stone. Yeah. His timing got thrown off. So you talked about earlier, Damien, about if you can get the golfer in, they're generally long-term clients. 3 weeks is not going to fix it. You need to get these guys for a year, 2 years. Like Robbie Cannon's worked with Shane for a long, long time. Shane phases in and out of things, but he's so talented. But Robbie got his weight down very slowly. He was, what people didn't see, you mightn't say, oh, he's skinny, but he was much stronger underneath. He was far, far stronger. But I would be careful from a weight loss point of view, dropping him way down too quickly. I think the fascia, when it's narrowed down into a smaller body, is going to throw them off. You'll lose a job. Now the normal amateur mightn't mind, but I think even the senior golfer won't want their...
Shane, what's your sort of checklist when you have a golfer who's turned up today, and obviously every day is different, so you can't...
I generally always want to get a screen. So,
you go through the same rotation?
Yeah. Check all those things. Help them move better in some way. Even if I don't give them a good baseline of more strength, if they can move a little bit better, then I know I've done half the battle with them. If I can improve their nutrition, either I tell them, hey, get some hydration. You need to get some... One of the players on tour, he's not playing anymore. He used to have 2 Mars bars and a bottle of Coke for his round in 5 hours.
The whole population, you mean?
Yeah, whole population. It's 5 hours. It's long, long time. So, I want them to warm up, and then most importantly is build a team. So find a medical person, a fitness person, and the coach. And if you are trying to get in there, if you want direct referrals, go and get coached. Go and get some golf lessons. So if you don't want to pay for them, then say, hey, look, I'll train you, and then maybe they might see how you're working and how you can improve them, and goes vice versa, and then they'll start saying, that's generally the easy way. If you don't like public speaking, go and speak to the pro, treat them for free, train them for free, and then they'll start sending their clients, particularly the busy ones and the good ones, and the ones that you want where they understand the body swing connection, because you're wasting your time otherwise if you're fighting against them. And the other team is finding good surgeons, particularly if we're talking about senior golfers. You don't repeat surgeries, which can happen.
Shane, the guys that do TPA or TPI, obviously they do the assessment. Do they do an exercise to correct it, or what way are they doing? What's the role of TPI before the screen, which gives them information, say, a day for the golf pros, or?
So when they do the level 1 seminar, the golf pro, medical, and fitness all go to the same seminar, so they all can screen. Now there's a bit of debate whether the golf pro should be doing it. It's the biggest. I think it's to give them all awareness of. Yeah. There has to be some baseline screen. And I've never had anyone complain that I've screened them.
And just regard yourself then, with working with players, you're going back to the screening process like often. Then you're checking that in particular. I'm
checking them every day, but I won't formally screen them every 6 to 8 weeks. I'll check even if a normal golfer came in and I was highlighting the hip, I would check that on every session I'll use my time to make sure that I was improving that instead of, I think we can over-screen. And the idea is not to get it perfect, it's just to improve I guess the point is, with experience, you'll find out, okay, there's one or two things that I need to work on that's going to give them the maximum. Because we can go on a corrective exercise washing machine, can't we? I found this, need to do this. That's the problem with the SFMA. It's all those 80 tests, or 75, 80 tests. You find all this thing and like, I don't know what to work on.
And there is that massive transfer of it, particularly to hurlers. Just the nature of the sport.
Yeah.
And are you personally working with a lot? Is that something that you do?
We used to look after the leash hurler, but I've had a lot of people or a lot of hurlers come in individually to me, and it works really well. And
Classic, they're just locked.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Shane,
Yeah.
these hurlers, would that be a short-term business plan?
I don't work with them anymore. I don't work. I don't.
I'm not talking about the vacancy to get connected to the Galway or something like that, Might have a longer season.
It's hard to work with I didn't formally. I've just seen Gaelic players individually. I think it's a very hard job to be doing fitness and medical for GA teams. Because you've one lad doing all those panels, you can't properly screen the players, the athletes. Even if they're running through FMS, it's not going to be enough. Because the players that are injured need to be taken out. They need to be making more robust. It's better if they take the player out and send them to a clinic. Then the other guys in the team mightn't necessarily know. What they're doing in the NFL and things, which we all know about, the players are spending ridiculous amounts of money on external sources, and they know those external sources can't say anything to the team because of medical legal. So they know if they knew there was an injury, they wouldn't get a contract.
And will there be a shift, do you think, or is there necessarily could happen in the future regards to kind of more systematic approach just in general?
I hope so. We all have a job to educate people. Because look at the whole thing with the Liam Miller testimonial. It's all old school stuff. They have a very, very tough job in Gaelic. And some of the hurler, look at the match yesterday, hurling. I just saw some of the highlights. It's going to replay again. Any other questions?
Yeah, cheers.